Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, the bill before us today is uncomplicated. It simply restores the constitutional order to our state and removes any doubt as to the actions allowed by each branch of government. All of us, regardless of political stripe or affiliation or no affiliation at all, should be gravely concerned that any governor would claim authority to seize unilateral control of state government for as long as he or she chooses. There are systems of government in the world, and I've been to some of them, that provide total authority to one person. Thankfully, the state of Michigan is not one of them. Our framers correctly realized that the pursuit of power was a vice to be safeguarded against. A recent unconscionable example of this is a no-bid contract placing private citizens' individual health care under the control of a partisan political data mining firm. I realize that none of my colleagues on the other side even made mention of that. The remedy to this is what our founders created, to establish checks and balances with branches of government co-equal, not subordinate to one another. But don't take my word for it. The Michigan Constitution is clear. Article 1, Section 1, all political power is inherent to the people. Government is instituted for their equal benefit, security, and protection, the protection of the rights of the people. Article 3, Section 2, the powers of government are divided into 3 branches, legislative, executive, and judicial. No person exercising powers of one branch shall exercise powers properly belonging to another branch. Now, I'll fully acknowledge and admit to you today that I was a little rusty on my public acts from 1945 when I walked in the door to this chamber. But for the benefit of those at home, I'll recap some of the highlights. There are 2 emergency power statutes in Michigan. Public Act 302 of 1945, which this bill seeks to repeal, allows the governor to declare a state of emergency under the following circumstances: disaster, rioting, catastrophe, or similar public emergency within the state. Nothing in this statute prohibits the governor from declaring a state of emergency that extends for the entirety of their term of office, relegating the place of the legislature entirely moot in any of that decision. Public Act 390 of 1976, however, designates a state of disaster, meaning an occurrence of threat, of widespread or severe damage, injury, or loss of life or property resulting from a natural or human-made cause, including an epidemic, the exact situation we're facing right now. That law clearly lays out a timeline under which the governor must receive an extension from the legislature. It is crystal clear that Public Act 390 of 1976, which provides a firm timeline for the governor, applies to the crisis related to the coronavirus outbreak in Michigan. It is clear that the governor requires the consent of the legislature to continue emergency powers. This bill removes any doubt as to the proper roles of government in our state. We can both grieve for the loss of life and still protect our system of government. Those two are not mutually exclusive. You want to talk about sanctity of life? I'm glad you brought that up. You think it's perfectly possible to rip a baby in half and call it life-sustaining, but not necessary for preventative medicine. We know of people denied chemotherapy. People have been denied pacemakers. I know of someone who went into the hospital with chest pain, but they waited at home for so long that by the time they arrived, they died shortly after. I've walked a few hardships, and I've been a few places that I hope none of you have to go to in your life. If I don't have the standing in this chamber to stand up and talk about that, then I don't know who does. It's a false choice that we cannot grieve for the loss of others and work on appropriate legislation at the same time. Our work here should not be relegated as insignificant simply because we think it will be hard, or that we think we'll have disagreements, or that others might think that we're arguing too much. Governing is hard. It's supposed to be hard. Making laws is supposed to be hard. It should be. Colleagues, stand with me in defense of our Constitution. Vote yes on Senate Bill 857, and I request that my remarks be printed in the Journal.